Welcome back. You're watching Politically Correct and I am Maya Hayakawa. Today we've been discussing medical malpractice. The public is outraged by recent videos that have surfaced of a gentleman who claimed to have been a doctor, which now it has been confirmed was not a doctor, and was sexually assaulting female patients who came to seek medical attention. The discussion we've been having here is the current status of our country and our medical practitioners. Who is responsible for regulating them? Are they being regulated properly? And what can we do to ensure that indeed the ethical standards of medical practice are upheld? And, you know, first of all, I mean, on one hand, yes, you know, Mr. Wairimu was not a doctor, but this does not mean that doctors are not failing to, you know, to deliver health services the way that they are supposed to be delivering it. We've had lots of cases that have come out that have to do with malpractice, that have to do with medical negligence. Would you say this, in this case, it is an example of malpractice? And what is malpractice?
Well, I hope we are moving away from the story of that person, whoever he was. Now let us now move away from the realm of those who are engaged in illegal practices and come to those who are legally practicing as doctors. Because that way, many of us are now comfortable to discuss people who are legally practicing as doctors. Yes, it is possible that from the many people practicing as doctors in this country, it is possible that once in a while, you will not miss those who are not practicing their trade according to the rule book. It is possible, yes. And
so what would you define malpractice as for the audience watching?
Medical malpractice, maybe as I'm not a lawyer, but I'll try to, I'm not being a lawyer, I'm just being a layman. Or malpractice or negligence, whatever you call it. Negligence as a term, maybe from the book some of us have been reading and we agree with it. It means that failure to exercise what I call ordinary skill and care when dealing with people that we owe a duty to exercise that skill and care. And I've used several words there carefully. You failed to exercise ordinary skill. Because we know that levels of competence may vary by training. For example, I am a doctor. We are walking on the street. We all run to an accident site to offer first aid to someone who has been knocked by a vehicle. The way I perform what I call basic resuscitation and the way you will do it is different because my ordinary skill is different from your ordinary skill in that context. And then we call it ordinary skill and care to persons that we owe a duty to exercise that skill. As a result of this failure, this person suffers a loss of any kind. Maybe in this case, like that clip which has been sensationalized. In this case, the people lose their privacy. In another case, somebody loses a wrong limb or something. So these kind of things can occur. So it's good to accept that these kind of things can occur and we must have them and carry them day to day. Now, turning to doctors. Ordinarily, if you come to me as a patient, it is not your duty as Maya to confirm whether I'm qualified to practice the trade I'm practicing. That duty belongs to two people or three. Number one, that duty belongs to the university where I trained and they gave me a degree and certified me as having been qualified to earn the term medical doctor, having gone through the approved curricula. Number two, it belongs to the professional regulator. In our case, the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board, which ensures that one, I am properly, have gone through a proper process of internship and I'm now licensed to practice as a medical practitioner. So that is their responsibility. Number 3, the state government of the Republic of Kenya owes a duty to citizens that those persons walking around calling themselves doctors, having been trained and certified, are indeed authentic. So if any of these 3 fail, then problems begin to arise. See? And now you, once you come to me, just by you coming to me and me accepting to take care of you and listen to your problems, whether or not we have signed a contractual agreement, that contract is assumed. You are sick, you have come to me as a licensed practicing medical doctor, there is already a contract in place. The implication of which is, I am qualified, I possess ordinary skill to deliver the care that you need. So where I do not deliver that, then you have a legitimate right to seek redress why I'm not delivering this.
And this is exactly what the public has done. Yes. The public has expressed outrage, especially when they have reported cases of malpractice. They've reported cases of negligence. Yes. Time and time again, these cases are pending, and yet these same doctors are still practicing until now. Why is this happening?
Yes, there is a process. When you feel strongly that your doctor has not handled you professionally, or he or she has been negligent, you have a right to lay a complaint with the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board. But remember what I told you at the beginning of this show. The act or the law that governs the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board has been given to it by Parliament. And in the mind of Parliament and the wisdom of Parliament of the Republic of Kenya, that act has only limited the board to regulate medical doctors and dental surgeons. If you bring a complaint and the board sits, we call it the Preliminary Inquiry Committee, where the complaint has come, they are processed by the Secretariat of the board and tabled in full board. And the preliminary inquiry establishes that the complaint you're generating does not touch on a doctor or a qualified medical doctor or dental surgeon, which falls within the purview of the board. What should the board do? The board will most likely, if the board chooses to be insensitive, it will basically write back and tell you that this complaint does not relate to people within our mandate. That could be an insensitive answer. If the board chooses to be sensitive, it would at its own discretion move to inquire from the other regulators whether this person you're complaining about is a nurse. It can choose to inquire with the nursing council. If it is a clinical officer, it can choose to inquire with the clinical officers and direct the complaint appropriately. But once the board discovers that this complaint indeed applies to a medical doctor or a dental surgeon, which is within their purview, then the board has to take it up. Contact the doctor who has been accused to give his side of the story. So this side of the story comes to the board. Then the board has, within the law, the board is carrying its legitimate duties. If the complaint comes and the board has sat and the board has made a review, and in its reasoned opinion, it can say, okay, this is a legitimate complaint. So the board will write to the doctor and ask him to provide information and maybe sanction the doctor if the complaint is legitimate, and write back to the complainant and explain the action taken. Two,
what actions can they take? What actions do they have the mandate to take?
Remember that the board being a professional outfit, the judgment made as to whether a practice is negligent or deviates from the norm, it will have to solicit opinions from experts within a given field. And this is allowed, by the way. Decisions of the board, for example, it's called a quasi-judicial tribunal, quasi-judicial tribunals are allowed to operate under the supervision of the High Court of the Republic of Kenya. So when the board decides, for example, that what this doctor did, a penalty can be like, for example, we can warn him and tell him to put in place A, B, C, D. You can get a warning. B, you can be served with a penalty to compensate the victim to a given amount. In the worst case scenario, the board can decide to withdraw the license to practice, and having withdrawn the same, order the practitioner back to school.
Now, which scenarios would cause a doctor to lose his license?
I wouldn't really want to go into specific scenarios, because this being a peer-reviewed, it's a peer-reviewed exercise. Peer review, and this is global, because I don't expect you as a journalist or a lawyer sitting somewhere outside, or maybe an engineer sitting somewhere. I do a surgery, for example. I do a surgery to remove what we call an inflamed, a sick appendix, for example. I don't expect you as a journalist or an engineer or something else to come and audit what has been properly done or what has not been properly done. So what the board does is that it would constitute what I can call a tribunal of experts within, if there are surgeons who deal with this kind of thing every day, what then would be the standard protocol of doing it. So I wouldn't really pick an issue and say, this one, if you do, your license will go. No. Let us look at it by an expert panel or an expert tribunal or a peer-reviewed process where the peers in that field feel that this is a major deviation from protocol. It can recommend to the board that in such a case, let us withdraw this license and return the doctor to school.
Now, Dr. George, all that you've said sounds very nice on paper. It sounds very well thought out, very well planned out. But the question that I have is that all that you have said, the responsibilities, the regulatory mandate of the board, are they actually implementing this? Because if the public is complaining and the public has expressed has expressed concern in the fact that they feel that their cases are not heard, they feel that doctors are not competent, so then would you say that they are actually...
Let's clarify one or two things. The public are legitimately mad. They are legitimately disappointed. So when the public are legitimately disappointed, nobody can belittle public complaints. There is a saying among the lawyers that the welfare of the public is the ultimate or the supreme law. But again, let's go back to the structural and legal framework and operational framework within which this board operates. I am a customer of the board by virtue of being a licensed medical practitioner. And even some of us have genuine misgivings. Some of these misgivings are arising from, have we really enhanced the capacity? When this board was formed in 1977-78, what was the population of the country? We probably were around 20. I know in the census of 1989, we were around 29 million. Assuming the country was growing at the rate of 1 million per year, the way we are growing, probably in 1977, 78, heading into 79, we were about 19 million Kenyans. That time, the board could probably afford to to implement its mandate effectively. But now we are dealing with 42 million. So I still feel that some of the disappointments coming from the public are arising from the fact that the expectations put on the board vis-a-vis the legal muscle of the board and the operational capacity of the board are not matched. A clear example, the board sits in Nairobi. It does not have branches in Garissa, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Loitoktok, Kiunga. Who is policing malpractice in those places? Must a Kenyan walk from Kiunga to Nairobi to file a complaint against a doctor? As a country, we must sit back. And by the way, the drafters of the Constitution were very clear that a state organ must do all that is necessary to ensure that its services are accessible within, accessible even to the remotest parts of the country. So let's go back. Probably you people of the media and the Kenyans who are mad. How do we empower and increase capacity of this board, both legally, financially, and operationally, so that it can implement its mandate? I strongly feel as a medic who is licensed, that part of the problems facing the board is because the expectations of Kenyans are this huge. The capacity of the board is this small. So it's a debate we must have as a country.
And in terms of, okay, you've really well explained the board's role in regulating the licensed doctors.
Yes.
What about those that are practicing illegally? Whose responsibility in terms
Yes,
of the law?
yes, now,
what does the law state in terms of who's responsible for regulating those that are practicing illegally?
Thank you very much, Maya. And I go back to the point I raised. The people of the Republic of Kenya, through their sovereign will, without coercion, have elected the sovereign parliament of the Republic of Kenya to make laws. In fact, parliament only has 3 businesses: to make laws, legislation, to represent the people. That mama in Kiunga struggling with these issues we are discussing has a member of parliament. Sawa sawa. Legislation, representation, and oversight. Because parliament oversees the other 2 arms of government that exercise state power without being elected. Now, there are 2 arms. There is the executive, whose head is the president. Of course, he's elected. So parliament has to oversight him. Parliament also has to oversight judiciary that is not elected. So to cut the long story short,
Yes.
If there is a weakness of the law that has left some people unregulated, we must ask the State Ministry of Health to suggest to Parliament what changes are required in the law so that those who are roaming the land unregulated are regulated, so that we can get a body to ask this kind of question.
So now the question that I'm asking you is, and you can clarify this, so then indeed there is no law, there's no policy right now in place to regulate illegal practicing of medicine. Is that what you're saying?
There is no law to regulate persons practicing illegally.
Thank you.
Whatever law is there, the law, the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Act, and we have discussed the people that it affects. We have also discussed its weaknesses. Where there is a gap in the law, let us ask our elected leaders to make the appropriate laws.
Thank you for that. We need to take a quick break again. Maybe when we come back from the show, then you can just take us through some of the solutions, some of the recommendations that you may have of what we need to do in terms of policy making to ensure that our medical professions are well regulated. So keep it tuned here at TVC Kenya. When we come back, more with Dr. George Got.